My fiancée left me for her cheating ex, but when she came back begging months later, the revenge she never saw coming broke her completely. I'm 30 years old. I work in marketing, and about 6 months ago, I ended a 4-year relationship that I thought was forever. I mean, we were engaged, we'd started planning the wedding, everything was going well, or so I thought. The thing is that my ex-fiancée, Natalie, basically told me she wanted to take a break to see if she could get back together with her ex-boyfriend from college, the guy who cheated on her years ago. And yeah, I know. It sounds absolutely ridiculous when I say it out loud, but that's what happened. I guess I should start from the beginning so all this makes sense. Though honestly, sometimes I feel like it doesn't make complete sense even to me. I met Natalie like 5 years ago, more or less, at one of those tiny art galleries where nobody really goes to buy anything but just to drink free wine and pretend they understand contemporary art. She was a freelance graphic designer. I had just gotten a decent job at a marketing agency, and we connected immediately. You know, that chemistry you feel when you meet someone and the conversation flows effortlessly. We started dating shortly after, and the first few years were really good, like the kind you see in movies where everything seems to fit perfectly. We moved in together after a year and a half, bought a house together in the third year, which looking back maybe was rushed, but at the time it felt right. And then in the fourth year I proposed to her on a trip we took to the mountains. She said yes. Obviously. We both cried. It was all very emotional and perfect, and I thought, well, this is the rest of my life and I'm happy with that. The first few months after the engagement were great, honestly. Natalie was super excited about planning the wedding. We'd look at venues for the reception. We'd talk about whether we wanted something big or something more intimate. She was making Pinterest boards with decoration ideas, all that stuff. But like 3 or 4 months in, I noticed her enthusiasm started to drop a bit, let's say. At first, I didn't give it much importance because, planning weddings is stressful and exhausting. Anyone knows that. So I thought she was just overwhelmed with everything. She stopped talking about it as much. When I'd ask her about some detail, she'd say things like, "Oh yeah, we'll see about that later," or "I don't know." Whatever you prefer, those kinds of responses that technically aren't bad, but feel weird when before she was super involved. I tried not to pressure her too much. I thought maybe she needed space or time to process everything, I don't know. Then we got to the night that basically changed everything. We had a small get-together at the house. Like 6 or 7 friends, nothing more, having some beers and playing those stupid games you play when you've already had a few drinks. Someone suggested that game where you say what moments of your life you'd relive if you could, like that hypothetical question nobody takes seriously but sometimes reveals more than it should. Most people said normal things, like my graduation, that trip to Europe, my first concert, things like that. When it was Natalie's turn, she thought for a moment. She had that kind of lost look she'd sometimes get, and then she said, "Probably my relationship with Austin in college, before everything went bad." There was one of those awkward silences that last 2 seconds, but feel like an eternity. And I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking or something. But she didn't laugh. She just shrugged and took a drink of her beer like she hadn't said anything weird. Austin was her ex from college, the guy she dated for like 2 years before meeting me. The only thing I knew about him was that he'd cheated on her with someone from their same class, and that when Natalie found out it was a huge drama, crying, screaming, the classic breakup disaster. She'd mention him occasionally, but always like, "Wow, I was such an idiot for putting up with him so long," never with nostalgia or anything like that. So her comment that night completely caught me off guard. After everyone left, I asked her if she was okay, if there was anything she wanted to talk about, and she said no, that it had just been a random answer without importance, that she was a bit drunk and didn't think about what she was saying. I wanted to believe her, but something in my stomach felt weird. You know that feeling when you know something's not right, but you can't identify exactly what? Like 2 weeks passed after that night, 2 weeks where everything seemed normal on the surface, but I noticed small, weird things. Natalie was checking her phone more often. She'd stay up late on the computer when I'd already gone to bed. She was kind of distracted when we'd talk. One night I came home from work and found her in the living room with that "I need to talk to you" face, and my heart basically sank because nothing good ever comes after that phrase. We sat on the couch. She was nervous, wringing her hands that way she did when she was anxious. And then she let it all out at once, like a verbal vomit she couldn't stop. She told me she'd been talking to Austin again, that he'd contacted her on Instagram like a month ago, that they'd been chatting, and that he'd changed a lot. That he wasn't the same person he was in college, that he'd matured and worked on himself, all that garbage people say when they want to justify unjustifiable things. And then came the part that destroyed me. She said, "I need to ask you something, and I know it's going to sound horrible, but I need to be honest with you. I want to take a break to see if Austin and I could work now." I just sat there processing her words like I was hearing them in slow motion. I literally couldn't believe what she was saying. I asked her, "Are you serious? You want us to pause our engagement, stop planning our wedding, so you can see if it works with the guy who cheated on you?" And she started crying and saying she knew it sounded terrible, but she couldn't marry me having these doubts. That she needed to close that chapter of her life properly or she'd always wonder what would have happened. She used phrases like, "This has nothing to do with you. You're incredible. I just need to do this for me." The whole classic speech of someone trying to feel less guilty about what they're doing. What surprised me most was my own reaction. I thought I was going to scream or cry or beg her not to do this, but instead I stayed completely calm, like a creepy calm I didn't know I could have. I told her, "Okay, if that's what you need to do, go ahead." She looked confused by my response. I think she expected more drama or resistance from me. I told her she could pack some things and stay at her mom's while she figured out what she wanted to do, and that I needed time to process all this too. She nodded, kept crying, started saying things like, "I'm so sorry. I don't want to hurt you." But I was already mentally checked out of the conversation. And that same night, she packed a suitcase with clothes and basic things and left, and I stayed sitting in the living room until 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what the hell had just happened. The first thing I did the next day was call my best friend Evan, who's known me since college and has been there for all my good and bad moments. I told him everything and he basically exploded. Like, "Dude, what the fuck? Is she crazy? She's leaving you for the asshole who cheated on her?" Talking to him helped a bit because it made me feel like I wasn't crazy for thinking the whole situation was absurd. Evan told me something that stuck with me. He said, "Look, Carter, if someone puts you as a second option, you need to remove yourself from the equation completely." And he was right. I mean, completely right. I wasn't going to be anyone's plan B. I wasn't going to sit around waiting to see if she decided I was good enough after trying. With her ex. Again. Natalie sent me a message like 3 days later, asking if we could talk. I told her yes, to come to the house. She arrived looking like she'd been crying. She looked tired and started talking about how she'd been thinking a lot about everything. She told me she still wanted to try things with Austin, but didn't want to lose me completely, that maybe we could put the wedding on hold temporarily, without canceling anything definitively, just postpone it until she was sure of what she wanted. I looked at her and felt absolutely nothing, like that moment when you realize the person in front of you isn't who you thought they were. I told her no, that it wasn't going to work like that I wasn't going to live my life in limbo waiting for her decision, and that if she wanted to go with Austin, then that meant what we had was over. Period. She tried to argue, saying I was being too drastic, that it didn't have to be all or nothing, but I'd already made my decision. After she left that afternoon, I called all the wedding vendors, canceled everything, lost some deposits, but honestly, I couldn't have cared less in that moment. I canceled the event hall, the catering, the photographer, the flowers, everything. Then I called a real estate agent and put the house on the market. Yeah, the house we'd bought together, the one we thought would be our family home where we'd raise kids and grow old together. I didn't give a damn that technically it was both of ours. I was going to sell it and give her half the money and never have to see that place that now only reminded me of this whole disaster. I started packing her things. All her clothes, her books, her design materials, her bathroom products, absolutely everything that was hers. I put in boxes very carefully because I'm not a monster, but I needed everything that was hers out of my space. A week after she left, when I'd already packed all her stuff in like 15 boxes, I loaded them in my car and took them to her mom's house. Her mom wasn't there, which was a relief because I didn't feel like explanations or drama. I left all the boxes on the porch, sent Natalie a message telling her things were at her mom's, and also left a short note that said something like, "I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care." It wasn't sarcastic or mean. I genuinely wished her the best, just that the best for her now was without me in her life. I think it was like 2 days after that when I got a bunch of messages from Natalie, like 20 messages in a row, saying she needed to talk to me urgently, that she'd made a terrible mistake, that things with Austin weren't what she thought. I ignored the messages for a while, but she kept insisting. So finally I told her she could come by the house. She arrived a complete mess, eyes swollen from crying, makeup running, and started talking super fast about how Austin was still the same asshole he'd always been, that he'd already tried seeing other girls, while they were supposedly reconnecting, that she'd realized she'd made the worst mistake of her life by leaving me, that I was the love of her life, and to please forgive her and give her another chance. But here comes the part I think affected her most. When she came into the house, she realized it was practically empty. Boxes everywhere, the for sale sign outside, all her stuff had disappeared. Her face, when she processed it all, was a mix of shock and panic. She asked me what was going on, and I explained, very calmly, that I'd canceled the wedding, that the house was being sold, that her things were at her mom's, that basically I'd moved on with my life. She started saying I was overreacting, that it had only been a week. How could I undo our whole life together so quickly? I told her she'd made the decision to undo our life. When she asked me for that break, that I was just respecting her decision and doing what was best for me. Natalie spent the next hour literally begging me to reconsider, saying she'd do anything to fix it, that she'd never talk to Austin again, that she'd been selfish and stupid, that she loved me more than anything in the world. And look, I'm not going to lie. Part of me was tempted to give in because we'd built a life together for 4 years. But the stronger part of me, the part that still had dignity and self-respect, knew that if I forgave her now, I'd always wonder if she really wanted me, or if she only came back because things with Austin didn't work out. I told her no, that what we had was over, that she needed to accept that and that we both needed to move on with our lives. She left the house crying hysterically, screaming that this couldn't be happening, and I closed the door and allowed myself to finally feel the full weight of the situation. The house sold relatively quickly. Like in 2 months, I found a small but nice apartment in another part of town. I moved with just the essentials because I wanted to start fresh, without things that reminded me of her or our life together. The first days in the new apartment were weird, like that feeling when everything is too quiet and you realize you're completely alone. But there was also something liberating about it, you know, the idea that I could do whatever I wanted without having to consider anyone else. I thought that's where all the drama ended, but oh, surprise, it didn't end there at all. Turns out Natalie started telling everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean our families and mutual friends. A completely distorted version of what happened. According to her narrative, I'd left her for no reason, that she'd made a small mistake and that I'd reacted in an exaggerated and cruel way by selling the house and canceling everything without giving her a chance to fix it. She didn't even mention the Austin part or the break she asked for. She just painted this story where I was the insensitive villain who destroyed our relationship over nothing. I started getting calls from my mom asking what had really happened because she'd heard from Natalie's mom that I'd been very harsh with her. Then my boss, who knew Natalie from company events, asked if I was okay because someone had told him I was going through a difficult breakup. Even friends I hadn't seen in months were sending me messages like, "Hey, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" It was absolutely frustrating because I wasn't going around telling everyone my version of the facts. I was trying to move on with my life in peace, and she was actively trying to make me look bad. I finally decided I had to clear things up. I made a group message with our families, basically my parents and hers, and sent them a long message explaining exactly what had happened, without drama or exaggerations, just the facts. I told them that Natalie had asked me for a break to explore a relationship with her ex, that I'd respected her decision and moved on, and that when she wanted to come back, I decided it wasn't best for me. I didn't go into unnecessary details or try to make her look bad. I just wanted them to know the truth. The responses were varied. My mom called me crying, saying she didn't know it had been that bad. Natalie's parents didn't respond at all. Some mutual friends sent me messages of support. After that, I blocked Natalie everywhere. Phone, social media, email, everything. I needed that definitive boundary because she kept trying to contact me in different ways. A mutual friend, Lily, sent me screenshots of posts Natalie was putting up on Instagram, passive-aggressive quotes about how some people don't value what they have until they lose it, about second chances and forgiveness, all clearly directed at me. It was several weeks of that kind of behavior from her, like she was on a public campaign to make me feel guilty or to make it seem like I was the bad guy in the story. There was a point where I considered responding publicly, making my own post explaining everything, but my friend Scott convinced me it wasn't worth it, that people who really knew me knew what I was like, and that feeding the drama would only prolong it. He was right. I just kept living my life, going to work, hanging out with friends, exercising, trying to focus on myself. I reported some of her contact attempts as harassment when they got very persistent, but mostly I just ignored them. The drama finally started to calm down after like 3 months. Natalie eventually stopped trying to contact me. The passive-aggressive posts stopped, and people stopped asking me about the situation. I heard from Evan, who still had some friends in common with her, that she'd started dating someone new, someone completely different. It wasn't even Austin again, thank God. I was happy for her, honestly, not in a sarcastic way, but genuine, because it meant she was finally moving on too. Now, 6 months after all this, I'm in a much better place. I have my apartment that I love. I'm considering adopting a dog because I always wanted one, but Natalie was allergic. I've been going on casual dates without pressure for anything serious, and honestly, I feel more like myself than I had in a long time. I'm not going to say there weren't difficult nights where I wondered if I did the right thing, if maybe I should have given her another chance, but deep down, I know I made the right decision for me. Nobody deserves to be treated as a second option, as a backup plan in case what they really want doesn't work out. Last week, I was at a coffee shop and saw a young couple looking at engagement rings in a jewelry store next door, laughing and excited. And I felt a pang of something. Not sadness exactly, but maybe nostalgia for what I thought I was going to have. But then I remembered that what I thought I had was an illusion. That if Natalie had really been committed to me the way I was committed to her, she never would have considered leaving me for someone else. And that's enough to know I did the right thing, I guess. I still believe in love. I still want to eventually find someone to build a life with. I just now know better what red flags to look for and what kind of person I really want by my side. And that, to be honest, is more valuable than anything I had with Natalie.